That's all. Push, 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 push.
Like velvet, yeah, like velvet.
Yes, chef. Pas bien. Change-le.
Yes, chef.
Maintenant, hein? Chef, fais ça. Show me, show me, show me. No, odds at the same time. Odds at the same time. We got it. Yeah? Okay, good. Everyone, great. Yes, chef. All right, double of everything, two of everything. Yes, chef. Come on, guys, think of it up. Come on, this is the dish. You are looking at that all the time, yeah? You have eyes on the whole time, so you have to pass.
Yes, chef.
Yeah, look at me. Yeah?
Yes,
You
chef.
up for it?
Yes, chef.
All right, let's go! Yes, chef! Come on, Michelin.
Chef CynthiaEast. We are at the Saracen Casino Resort in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. So when I was 15, I took a job at Bonanza on the corner of Asher and University in Little Rock. And I think I started as a waitress, but by the time I left there, about 3 years later, I pretty much could do anything in the building. I started there because my mother knew the owner. They were good friends, and she told him to make sure that we worked hard, that we were on time, and she knew that he would kind of mentor us. I always loved to cook. My grandmother loved to cook. She loved to cook like a chef. And when they retired, they moved out to Quitman, Arkansas, and bought a bunch of land, and they farmed everything you could possibly farm in Arkansas, it seemed like. And I just remember going and staying in the summers with them and being out there picking ripe tomatoes, and I can't eat a tomato now and not compare it to the tomato that came straight off the vine, perfectly ripe. And it was cool because she would preserve them. So, I mean, we had canned tomatoes all year round, greens. I mean, the whole table, when we would get together, would be filled with vegetables. And then there'd be like a platter of chicken, you know. And the chicken was good, but it was really all about the vegetables. And then after being in, you know, the industry for the 3 years, I was like, you know, I think I kind of like this. Somewhere around the age of 17 or 18, I had this idea that, you know, it would be a good career because I loved it. And I thought, well, you know, I could also change the world a little bit at a time. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew that people needed food and that it was something that I could do and, you know, make an impact. I started culinary school a month before I turned 21.
Okay.
So I worked in the industry, and I met a chef out in Kingsport, Tennessee. And he was a Culinary Institute of America graduate, and he could tell that I loved it, and asked me if I had considered going to college, and I was like, yeah, I guess, you know. And he encouraged me to go. I found out how expensive it was, and, you know, it took me a while. I was like, I don't know, I don't really want student loans, blah, blah, blah. And then one day I was like, I'm tired of making minimum wage. I'm gonna just find a way to do this. And it was hard to get there. I didn't have any money. My parents didn't have any money. But I just kept digging for scholarships, digging for a way. I remember my third semester, there were 5 semesters there. And my third semester, I didn't have any money for fourth semester until about a week before the semester started. I mean, I was in that financial aid office every single day, going through magazines and books, because, you know, nothing was really online then. I sound old. I don't know, I just kept applying for scholarships, and I caught a break and was able to continue, and so I graduated around 2001. The financial aid director walked by me every day, and one day I just broke out into tears. Like, somebody's got to help me here. Like, this is not working. And so she pulled me into her office and helped me get a Pell Grant. I don't even know, to this day, I'm like, I don't even know where it came from. But it kept me afloat, and then I was able to figure out the rest of it, you know. I think that, you know, the older we get, hopefully the more patient we're getting. You know, we are maturing every day. You know, if we're not constantly learning and growing, not just in the hard skills, but our people skills, and then our own self-reflection, then it's going to be very, very difficult to move up, you know. And it's okay if you don't have like these huge aspirations to be a famous chef in New York. That's not necessarily what this is all about, but you have to figure out, what am I doing this for? You know, what kind of impact do I want to make on my family's life, my community, the world around me, and be motivated by that. You know, it's not, if it's just a job, it's going to be really hard to find a home, you know, in a restaurant. If you don't love being in the kitchen, it's going to wear you down real fast, because it's going to wear you down either way, you know. There was definitely progression, right? So, I mean, it started out being a waitress, you know, at Bonanza, which was kind of like fast casual is now. You had cashier, order taker, you sat down, if you ordered a steak, they brought you your food, otherwise there was the buffet. And I mean, I washed dishes there. I worked in the back kitchen. I learned a lot from the ladies back there about how to make dressings from scratch. I mean, I learned how to fry chicken. Part of learning how to fry chicken was learning how to clean the fryers twice a day, because they weren't doing it because I was there, you know. Learned how to cook steaks on the grill, learned how to work the fryers in the front to order. And I did that actually. The grill cook taught me how to do that so that he could have a break in the afternoons. So I was actually a cashier, and he taught me how to do that, and I was like, okay, I'll learn this. And then from there, I've always worked front and back of house, and I think that's actually pretty cool, because you can understand, you can have some empathy for the other side, right? And you understand the intricacies of the entire operation. And certainly if someone ever wanted to own their own restaurant, it would be very helpful if they understand all the aspects of the restaurant. And the only way you can do that is to work it. So I usually would have a part-time job waiting tables and a full-time job in the kitchen. So I mean, I've worked everything from full-service pizza restaurants and I've line cooked at a pizza restaurant. That was pretty cool, making dough from scratch. And then I made it to the Ritz-Carlton after college. I went to the Ritz-Carlton in Bachelor Gulch, which is close to Vail, Colorado. And basically that's kind of what started really catapulting my career, because they had such a wonderful training program. So I applied for trainer, and that's when I found my love for teaching. And from there I was a supervisor. And then when I left Colorado and came back here, I found the Culinary School. Loved doing that, helped write curriculum. I was like, wow, I like paperwork. But it was an apprenticeship program. And we took it from an apprenticeship program to an accredited degree program. Now, I worked with Renee and Todd for 2 years to tighten that up so that it was ACFEF ready. And then we called them and we said, come check us out. And we turned in stack loads of paperwork that took us probably 6 months to gather. And then from there, I actually, in the summers, I was teaching online, and I got a phone call from someone that my mother knew. His children had opened Tacos for Life. They had opened Pizza for Two 4 years earlier. They opened Tacos for Life on Oak Street in Conway, and they were totally overwhelmed because they were cooking pretty much everything from scratch, which was great, but they were way busier than they had expected, and they weren't really restaurateurs, so they didn't have systems in place, and it was just crazy, and they needed help. So they called me, they said, hey, can you come just do some consulting? I said, sure. So I went and helped them out, and they told me that their goal was to be able to feed 1 million children a day. And to do that, they would have to open 1,000 restaurants because they were raising about 1,000 meals a day. And I said, wow, that's a great goal. That's awesome. I said, you know, with the work you're doing in the kitchen and the level of organization and prep, you know, that's needed back here, I said, you'd probably be wise to hire in a kitchen manager, and maybe this is someone who could eventually become your corporate chef. So we wrote up a job description, sent it out, they interviewed a few people, And about a month and a half, 2 months later, they called me and they said, hey,
When did you start?
would you like to do it? And I was like, oh wow, you know, this is kind of crazy. I just basically wrote my own job description. And I love teaching, but I was like, you know, I'm still young enough to be in the industry. I can always go back and teach. And I never really stopped teaching. I kept doing the community education classes as much as possible, which is hard when you are getting started, but I finally was getting back in there. And so I started working with them, and I mean, we had the one location, and then we turned the Pizza for Two into a Tacos for Life, because the way the Meal for Meal program went, the tacos were earning more meals than the pizza was, and it was just easier to do one concept. And when I left there, we had opened 16 restaurants in 5.5 years and raised millions of meals. I think a lot of it is basically reputation.
How do you build that?
How do you build that? You have to be consistent. I mean, the people that I've worked for, they know that if they are asking me to do a job, that I am not only going to do the job that they expect me to do, I'm going to go above and beyond that. I'm going to do the things that they haven't even thought of that I should be doing or that I need to be doing. Especially in that atmosphere of Tacos for Life. I mean, they were neither of them had any kind of experience in restaurants, much less being a chef. So they didn't know that we needed a food safety program. They didn't know how to write a prep list, how to create a prep list. So basically, by taking all of my experiences in all these different restaurants that I've worked in and thinking, okay, what were the best systems and how are they put together? So I'm not necessarily like being super innovative in that sense. I'm just applying what I've learned, but I follow through with it, you know. And I'll tell you, at the culinary school, at Tacos for Life, and here, you know, I put in a lot of work on the front end, to put systems in place. And it works out really, really well, because even though I may be up till midnight doing food costing or putting together a better prep list or an inventory system, it pays off in the long run. And then I can leave a little early to go to my daughter's viola concert on a Thursday.
Because you're not scrambling on the back end.
Because I'm not scrambling. We're being as proactive as possible. And I learned a lot of that from 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. I went to a 2-day seminar. I mean, it was an amazing program, and I went through that training at the Ritz-Carlton. I mean, they're famous for their training programs, and I mean, just my whole experience there really it changed my life. It catapulted me, you know. So, yeah, what constitutes amazing? Good work ethic.
Okay.
A true passion for people and product. Team players. Overnight work, you don't necessarily have to be so much of a team player. You can be a little bit of a like, oh, I like to just do this on my own. But for the most part in restaurants, we are a team. Good attitude, you know. So back up to team playing, good interpersonal skills, a willingness to learn, the capability to receive critical feedback, a sense of urgency, punctuality is very important, someone who is reliable, which means that if I give you a task, you're going to finish it without me having to ask again. You know, those are the basics. I'm sure there's probably something I've left out there. Notice that I did not say the inherent ability to use a knife. We can teach that. And what's really cool about a casino and the way we have it lined up here is that you can have zero experience and you can start in the prep kitchen and work your way to a fine dining restaurant and have breakfast experience and lunch experience I mean, I think that the first thing we have to that I've learned that we have to do is call it what it is. So I have experienced a great deal of sexual harassment in the workplace. At first, I didn't know how to deal with it. I was 15 years old, and a lot of it was kind of like, oh, it was supposed to be funny. So I would laugh at it. The problem with that is it does not communicate clearly that I'm not okay with it. And what I had to learn was that now there are some situations that are just plain not acceptable, and everybody frickin' knows it. I mean, if you're gonna touch me, there's no warning. You already know. And if you don't know, you've been sleeping under a rock. Especially when you're in the workplace, right? But I think sometimes, people do think they are trying to be funny. Sometimes they're not. But what I've learned is that if I look at someone, I mean, it could be man, woman, it doesn't matter. This could be played out in any way from anyone. But to be able to look them in the eyes and tell them that is not acceptable, I'm not okay with it, don't do it again. And that has never not worked for me. It was really scary when I first started doing it. My heart would start racing. I could feel my blood pressure rise. And then I was like, wait a minute, this works. And the person on the other end is like, oh, I'm sorry. And then we both move on. If you think about what harassment is when somebody keeps doing something to you when you've asked them not to. Now again, there are already some really plain rules. But I think that being able to communicate with each other and talk about these things honestly is what, for me, has made for a pleasant workplace. And if I hear it happening, not just because I'm a leader, because leaders have to do that. We have an obligation to hear those things happening and stop them and act on it.
Absolutely.
I mean, we literally have a legal obligation, but we also have a moral obligation. But even before leadership, if I heard it happening, I would speak up. So we haven't necessarily been taught how to do that. So I think it just has to be a conversation that we're having. When I was in culinary school, in our gastronomy class, which was one of our very first classes, I was one of 3 women in a class of 13. And our instructor, he was a wine instructor, but he taught gastronomy. It was pretty cool. And this was something that every class had this discussion, but we had a discussion about sexual harassment, and it was kind of cool. The guys were like, well, what if I like you and I ask you out on a date? And the girls were like, that's fine, but when I say no, that's it. If I become interested, I'll let you know. And you don't ask me out on a date, in the middle of class while chef is there trying to give instruction. There's a time and place for everything. And I think the girls ended up telling the guys, listen, guys, if you wouldn't say it to your mother or your daughter or your sister, you probably shouldn't say it to me. Something that I've noticed about younger generations, and I think a lot of it has to do with technology, but I also think it's part of our culture of capitalism, is that, we want everything right now. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in, it takes time to master something. And that's okay. Anyone who doesn't have experience before culinary school, food service experience before culinary school, they're going to have a hard time if they expect to be a sous chef or a chef right out of culinary school. Now, if our executive sous chef here is a culinary school graduate. He became a GM, right outside of culinary school, but he was already in a leadership position when he went to culinary school. So it just kind of helped catapult. So learning the skills, really learning the skills Like, you should be able to do conversions in your head 20 years from now, like now and 20 years from now. You should be able to remember the ratios for cooking rice or cooking creme anglaise. There may be some time in between school and you actually applying some of these things in your everyday job. So take good notes and just drill it into your head. That is the first level of learning, is memorization. Memorize it and then work your way up to being able to analyze. That takes time. It takes a lot of practice. You have to practice. And you just have to be patient. And you have to set a good reputation for yourself. It is a small industry, really. Travel around to different places in your career, especially when you're young or young in your career, to get different experiences. It's something that really is acceptable in our industry. There is a point where you have to kind of show some longevity, but there is nothing wrong with making some lateral moves so that you can get some good experience in different types of operations. Well, first of all, congratulations to all the students for being where you are, because you've taken a good first step in launching what could be a very successful career. I used to tell my students at Pulaski Tech, and I tell my daughter this, what you learn in school is not necessarily what your instructors taught you. It's what you're getting out of school. So if you're not getting it, you have to look at yourself and say, what can I do to get it? There's so many resources out there. If I could go back to the CIA today, I would still learn more. There's so much out there, you know, and you don't know what you don't know. But you've got the books, you've got the videos, you've got the instructors, you've got the students around you, you've got professionals in the industry around you. So,
and tomorrow you'll still learn more.
And 20 years from now,
absolutely,
you are going to continue to learn if that's what you choose to do. And that's what you have to do to make a good career in this industry. And technology, by the way. We have to be tech savvy. I'm telling you, we have these iCombies here, these rational iCombies, and they're so, if you don't know how to use technology, it's gonna hurt. So if you're not comfortable with it, get home.
Well, thanks, Chef.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna.
You're still here? It's over. Go.